Canada is entering a new era. This is our moment to define our next century. We have the resources to transform our economy from one of reliance to resilience.
Trade tensions with the United States helped spark a shift in consumer habits. More Canadians choosing homegrown products, prompting grocers to stock and spotlight more domestic goods.
We will build Canadian by becoming our own best customer. With our new Buy Canadian policy, whenever the federal government spends, we will select Canadian suppliers by default.
Canada is standing at the edge of a historic turning point, a moment that will define its next century. For decades, the world viewed Canada as stable, predictable, and always aligned with the United States. But today, something unprecedented is unfolding. A quiet transformation is sweeping across the country, led by a government determined to build strength at home, not rely on politics abroad. Prime Minister Mark Carney's new direction isn't just policy, it's strategy, it's identity, and it's a bold declaration that Canada will no longer wait for American approval to grow, innovate, and lead. This is the story of a nation stepping out of America's shadow and stepping into its own future. A future built on self-reliance, confidence, and economic independence. Welcome to the new era of Canada, one that Washington did not expect, and one that is already reshaping North America's balance of power. For years, the United States assumed that Canada would always play the supporting role. A dependable partner, a silent neighbor, a market eager to buy American goods. But that assumption has been shattered. Mark Carney's rise signals a dramatic shift in Canada's posture toward the world. Instead of bending to American trade pressure, Canada is now charting its own course with precision and purpose. Washington expected compliance. It got competition. U.S. officials privately admit they were caught off guard by Canada's newfound confidence, especially as tensions rise and American politics become increasingly unstable. What looked like a simple policy announcement has quickly evolved into a strategic realignment. And Trump's camp, which once relied on keeping Canada economically dependent, is now scrambling to understand how Ottawa managed to flip the narrative so fast. Canada isn't reacting anymore. Canada is moving, and this time, on its own terms. Most leaders promise economic resilience. Mark Carney is actually building it. His approach isn't based on slogans or symbolic gestures. It's rooted in structural reform. Carney understands something crucial. Dependence is vulnerability. And for decades, Canada's supply chains and procurement systems were heavily tied to American companies. That made Canada sensitive to every U.S. tariff, political shift, border slowdown, and election cycle. Instead of waiting for stability, Carney is engineering it himself. His strategy restructures how Canada spends public money, how Canadian businesses grow, and how national industries position themselves for the next 50 years. It's deliberate, data-driven, and unapologetically nationalistic. And unlike past policies, this one isn't reactive. It's proactive. Carney isn't trying to survive U.S. unpredictability. He's insulating Canada from it. This is the difference. For the first time in a long time, Canada is investing in independence, not accommodation. At the heart of this transformation is a policy that's bigger than a slogan. Buy Canadian. For decades, American suppliers held a comfortable and often dominant position in Canada's procurement landscape. But that ends now. Carney's Buy Canadian strategy rewires the entire system. When the federal government spends, Canadian suppliers are the default choice, not the afterthought. Billions in construction, defense, infrastructure, energy, agriculture, and tech contracts are being redirected back into Canadian companies. This is more than economic nationalism. It's economic restructuring. Local factories, manufacturers, engineers, and innovators suddenly find themselves at the front of the line. And the ripple effects are enormous. U.S. industries that once relied on Canadian business are already warning Washington. The revenue they took for granted is disappearing. Canada isn't just promoting local products, it's reclaiming its economic backbone. And in doing so, it's redrawing the balance of North American trade power. Behind the scenes, U.S. officials are nervous. This isn't because Canada is acting aggressively, but because Canada is acting independently. For decades, American policymakers counted on Canada's reliance on U.S. supply chains. It gave Washington leverage. Whenever Trump imposed tariffs, he assumed Canada had no choice but to absorb the shock. But Carney's strategy breaks that dependency. American aerospace suppliers, steel producers, tech manufacturers, and agricultural exporters are realizing they're losing one of their biggest buyers. Industry groups are already pressuring U.S. politicians to respond. And Trump, who built a political identity around dominating trade partners, is visibly irritated. His America First doctrine relied on the idea that no country could push back, especially not Canada. But Canada has done exactly that. And the quiet panic emerging in Washington suggests they understand one thing clearly. They underestimated their northern neighbor. Canada's transformation isn't happening slowly. It's happening at record speed. One of the most groundbreaking elements of Carney's strategy is the fast-tracking of major national projects. Manufacturing hubs, energy expansions, clean tech plants, transportation corridors, and innovation clusters are being approved faster than ever before. No long delays, no political bottlenecks, no waiting for international partners to take the lead. This speed is intentional, and it sends a powerful message. Canada will no longer let American political cycles dictate the pace of Canadian growth. The country is building with urgency because it understands the global moment. The world is shifting. Supply chains are realigning. Technology competition is accelerating. And Carney wants Canada positioned to win, not follow. By acting fast, Canada is proving something simple. Independence isn't a dream. It's infrastructure, jobs, factories, and timelines that don't wait for Washington. No national transformation comes without internal debate. Within Canada, some MPs have questioned whether Carney's strategy is too bold, too accelerated, or too disruptive. Liberal MP Nathaniel Erskine Smith voiced concerns about certain budget elements tied to the Buy Canadian framework. Instead of backing down, Carney did the opposite. He doubled down. His message was clear. Canada needs stability that cannot be shaken by foreign politics, especially U.S. politics that shift dramatically every 4 years. That firmness surprised critics and reassured industries. It signaled that this wasn't a temporary program or an election cycle talking point. It's a long-term national direction. Even those who disagree with the pace acknowledge the logic. Canada cannot depend on a neighbor whose policies can turn overnight. Carney's resolve shows something rare in modern politics. A leader willing to prioritize long-term national resilience over short-term political comfort. And Canadians are noticing. Across Canada, industries are already adapting to the new reality. In Ontario, factories are preparing to meet escalating government demand. In Quebec, aerospace and advanced materials sectors are redesigning supply chains around domestic production. Western provinces are exploring how agriculture, mining, and energy can evolve to thrive within Canada First procurement rules. And in the tech corridors of Vancouver, Calgary, Montreal, and Atlantic Canada, startups and innovation hubs are organizing long-term strategies built around federal incentives that reward local development. This isn't a small adjustment. It's a nationwide industrial reset. The shift is forcing companies to think bigger, produce more locally, and collaborate across provinces. It's also attracting global investors who see Canada emerging as a stable, self-reliant market in a world filled with geopolitical uncertainty. Bit by bit, industry by industry, Canada is strengthening its foundation, not by accident, but by design. What's happening in Canada isn't just an economic shift, it's a cultural one. For decades, the country's national identity has included quiet cooperation, partnership, and diplomacy. But the new era adds something different: confidence. independence, a willingness to lead without waiting for the U.S. to approve, direct, or react. Carney's strategy redefines how Canadians see themselves and how the world sees Canada. No longer the polite follower, no longer the predictable neighbor. Canada is making decisions based on Canadian interests, Canadian workers, and Canadian security. And the world is paying attention. As Europe, Asia, and emerging markets strengthen ties with Canada, Washington faces a reality it never prepared for. A Canada that is not dependent, not passive, and not silent. This new identity is powerful, intentional, and built to last. A Canada that leads itself is a Canada that rises. Canada's transformation isn't a moment, it's a movement. A strategic recalibration designed to secure the next century of Canadian prosperity. Mark Carney's Buy Canadian revolution, the fast-tracking of national projects, the restructuring of supply chains, and the rise of domestic industries all point to one truth. Canada is shaping its future with purpose. The era of quiet reliance is over. The era of confident independence has begun. As the U.S. recalculates its position and global markets take notice, Canada steps forward, not as a follower, but as a leader. And this is just the beginning. If you want to stay updated on this historic shift, on Canada's evolving political strategy, and on the changing balance of North American power, make sure you subscribe. You're watching RedLeaf Politics, your home for bold analysis, deep breakdowns, and the future of Canadian leadership. Subscribe now and stay ahead.